Why would a child walk up to a hardened Marine colonel and ask to fire a sniper rifle? The sun scorched the asphalt at Fort Pendleton, heat waves bending the air above rows of parked Humvees and pop-up tents. Families strolled between barbecue pits, helicopter displays, and K-9 demonstrations. Children shrieked with laughter at the face-painting booth. Soldiers relaxed in the shade, trading stories that would never appear in any official logbook. And through all that noise, one sound cut sharper than the rest: boots squeaking. Too big, too heavy, borrowed from her older brother, but she wore them anyway, every step carrying a stubborn rhythm. 9-year-old Sarah Chun, barely 4 feet tall, her shoulders squared, her small frame lost in oversized fatigues that hung like armor not yet fitted. She didn't blink at the curious stares of other kids or the quick smiles of Marines who thought she was just playing dress-up. Her eyes locked on one place, the firing range at the far end of the field. She stopped in front of Colonel Harrison, who was speaking with Master Sergeant Williams about crowd safety. The colonel's hair was silver, his face weathered by decades of deployments, but his laugh line still softened him. "Sir," Sarah snapped a salute, her hand rising with flawless precision. "I'd like to qualify for the sniper range." The colonel blinked, then he laughed. It wasn't cruel, just surprised, disbelieving. A chuckle that spread to the Marines nearby, then to some families sitting at picnic tables. People turned their heads, expecting to see the punchline to some cute moment. "Well," Colonel Harrison said, still grinning, "aren't you the cutest little recruit? Did your daddy put you up to this?" But Sarah's steel-gray eyes didn't flinch. "No, sir, I'm serious. I've been studying ballistics, wind compensation, and breathing techniques for the past 18 months. The laughter faltered. It was the way she said it. No giggles, no hesitation. The gravity of her words felt too heavy for someone her age. Her stance was perfect, feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind her back at parade rest. Not sloppy like a kid mimicking adults. Exact, memorized, lived. "Studying ballistics," the colonel repeated, his smile tugging downward. "Yes, sir. External ballistics. Projectile trajectory through air. Gravity, drag, humidity, barometric pressure. I can calculate bullet drop at range and adjust for Coriolis effect." A small crowd formed, drawn by the sound of a child who spoke like a marksman. Marines, Navy personnel, parents balancing paper plates of ribs. Corporal Jackson muttered, "Jesus, kid talks like she swallowed a field manual." Sarah's chin lifted. "Most assume children lack discipline for precision shooting, but my size gives stability, smaller profile, less sway." Her words echoed against the hot silence. She wasn't reciting, she believed it. Colonel Harrison studied her more carefully now. The boots too big but laced perfectly. The uniform baggy but clean and pressed. And those eyes, not a child's, not entirely. "All right, little soldier," the colonel said finally. "One shot. If you can hit a target at 100 yards, I'll escort you to the advanced course myself." The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Phones lifted. Parents exchanged knowing looks, ready to console her after the inevitable miss. Sarah nodded once. "Yes, sir, accepted." She paused. "Which rifle will I be using, sir, and what's the current wind speed?" The colonel's eyes narrowed. "Wind speed." "Yes, sir. The flags show 8 to 10 miles per hour from the southwest, but I'd prefer an exact reading for windage adjustment." Master Sergeant Williams, half smirking, checked his handheld device. 9.2 southwest. "Thank you, Sergeant," Sarah said, turning back to the colonel. "And the rifle?" Harrison found himself answering automatically. "M4 carbine, standard issue, optics zeroed at 200 meters. Sarah's voice was calm. "Then at 100 yards, standard 5.56 rounds will print approximately 2 inches high. I'll adjust." Murmurs rippled through the Marines. Even veterans now looked at her differently, not as a novelty, as a possibility. The colonel gestured to the range. "Let's see what you've got." The crowd followed, whispers softening to silence. The smell of gun oil mixed with barbecue smoke as Sarah stepped onto the firing line. Williams handed her the M4, expecting her arms to sag under the weight. Instead, she lifted it smoothly, ran a safety check, cycled the chamber, clicked the safety back on. Her voice carried clear. "Weapon is clear and safe, Sergeant." The sergeant's eyebrows rose. The colonel exchanged a glance with him. "Where did you learn that, Sarah?" Harrison asked quietly. Her composure flickered just for a heartbeat, a shadow across her face. Then her mask returned. "My mother taught me, sir, before she deployed." The words sank into the watching crowd like a stone into water. "Before she deployed," a phrase heavy with absence. Gunnery Sergeant Maria Chun, scout sniper, killed in Afghanistan 14 months ago. A silence spread among the Marines. Some removed their covers, some lowered their eyes. Sarah moved into the prone position, the oversized rifle suddenly fitting her like an extension of herself. Breathing slowed, muscles aligned, a transformation. "Spotter ready," Sergeant Rodriguez called from the tower, curious now. Sarah's finger touched the trigger. Inhale, exhale halfway, hold, squeeze. The shot cracked like thunder. "Dead center bullseye," Rodriguez's voice announced. No one moved. For a second, even the wind seemed to stop. Sarah stood, cleared the weapon, and turned to the colonel. "Permission to advance to 300 yards, sir." The colonel stared at her, his brain scrambling for explanation. "Who's been training you?" he asked finally. Her eyes darted to the crowd, searching, then back to him. "I can't say, sir, I promised." "Promised who?" Williams asked gently. Sarah's jaw tightened. A Marine's word is their bond. The phrase was spoken like a vow carved into her bones. Colonel Harrison knelt to her level, his voice softer. "Your mother was a Marine, was she?" Sarah's eyes glistened, just for a moment, then steel again. "Gunnery Sergeant Maria Chun, scout sniper, KIA, Afghanistan." The words hit harder than the rifle's crack. The laughter that had started this moment felt cruel now. Marines bowed their heads. Parents hugged their children closer. Sarah adjusted the rifle again, calm as stone. "My instructor says I have a gift," she whispered. "Says Mom would want me to be the best I can be." The colonel nodded slowly. "Then let's see just how good you really are." Word spread across the base. Marines abandoned their barbecue plates, Navy SEALs paused training, commanders stepped out of offices, families hushed their children, news crews lifted cameras. A 9-year-old girl lay prone at the 300-yard line. The crowd leaned forward, caught between disbelief and reverence. Sarah's breathing slowed again, eyes locked through the scope. The shot cracked. "Split the X-ring," Rodriguez called, voice hushed with awe. The crowd erupted, not in laughter but in thunderous applause that rolled like surf across the base. And through it all, Sarah didn't smile, didn't flinch, didn't even acknowledge the spectacle she had created. Her eyes lifted only once, toward the sky, where she imagined her mother's steady hand still guiding hers. Why would a master chief, with scars from decades of combat, take interest in a child at a firing line? By the time Sarah rose from her second shot, the range wasn't just a place for family day games anymore. It was a stage. Word traveled faster than gunpowder catching flame. Marines jogged across the field, officers slipped through the crowd, even Navy personnel from neighboring hangars arrived. Phones streamed live, voices lowered as though the air itself demanded reverence. And through that storm of whispers, one figure cut forward with calm, unquestionable authority. Master Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, a name that carried weight in every special operations circle. His face bore scars from places the public never knew about. 2 decades of shadow wars written into the lines around his eyes. A man who trained SEAL snipers to survive the impossible. He stopped in front of Colonel Harrison, his voice gravel from years of shouting orders over gunfire. "Colonel, I need to see what this kid can do." The colonel stepped aside, relieved, almost grateful. "Master Chief, meet Sarah Chun." Sarah snapped a salute, tiny, crisp, unwavering. Thompson studied her for a long moment. His eyes narrowed, not with ridicule but evaluation. He'd seen thousands come through training pipelines, most broken by the weight of expectation. But this girl, she didn't fidget, didn't blink. "Sarah," he said, crouching down to meet her gaze, "I'm going to be straight with you. SEAL sniper qualification isn't a game. Grown men break here, men who have trained for years. You sure you want to attempt this?" "Yes, Master Chief." "You understand the standards?" "Yes, Master Chief. My mother always said pressure is just another factor, like wind or elevation." For a moment something flickered in Thompson's eyes. Respect, maybe even recognition. "All right," he said, standing. His voice rose over the crowd. "Clear the range. This isn't a circus act. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." Families were pushed back to the observation zone. Reporters adjusted tripods. The buzz of helicopters circled overhead, but the space around Sarah grew quiet, empty, a crucible. Thompson laid out the course. "You'll engage at 500, 600, 800, 1,000, and 1,200 yards, stationary, moving, elevated, wind shifts, time pressure. Miss more than one shot, you're done." Sarah nodded, not a tremor in her face. The colonel glanced at Williams. "She doesn't even look nervous." Williams shook his head. "Maybe she doesn't know what nervous is." At the 500-yard line, Sarah lay prone. The weapon felt heavier now, stretched to its limits. The crowd leaned in, breaths held. "Target standard silhouette," Rodriguez called from the tower. "Wind variable, 8 to 14 southwest." Sarah adjusted scope dials with methodical precision. No range cards, no notes, just numbers spinning in her mind like gears. "Spotter ready," Rodriguez said. Sarah exhaled, finger steady. The shot cracked. "Center mass, perfect hit." A murmur rolled through the crowd, but Thompson's face didn't change. He wasn't interested in one shot. He wanted to see her break. At 600 yards, the target moved. A 3-second exposure. Marines who'd trained for years often failed here. The mechanism jerked. A silhouette slid across. Sarah waited, then crack. Rodriguez's voice came sharp. "Dead center, 2-second mark." Even Thompson leaned forward, his skepticism bending. 800 yards, elevated platform, crosswind biting harder now. Sarah studied the target for nearly a full minute, adjusted her aim with silent calculations. The shot rang, the hit was perfect. The crowd swelled, hundreds now. Marines from other installations had driven over after radio chatter reached them. Camera crews broadcast live. Families held their children tighter, whispering as if they were standing in church. But Sarah didn't hear any of it. Her world narrowed, rifle, scope, breath, calculation. Now the 1,000-yard shot. Thompson crouched beside her. His voice softened, meant only for her ears. "This is where it gets real, Sarah. 1,000 yards, shifting wind. This separates good from great. You ready?" She didn't blink. "Yes, Master Chief. My instructor says the hardest shots matter most." Her eyes locked through the scope. Her breathing slowed until it matched the stillness of the earth. "Crack." Rodriguez hesitated, checked again. Finally, his voice broke across the range. "Perfect center mass. New base record at 1,000 yards." Applause erupted. Marines cheered. Some wept. Hardened men who'd lost comrades in far-off deserts and mountains now cheered for a 9-year-old girl. But Sarah didn't rise, didn't acknowledge. Her finger brushed the rifle's stock. Calm, centered, already thinking ahead. The 1,200-yard line waited. Whispers spread like wildfire. Few SEAL candidates cleared this on their first attempt. It was the edge of the possible. Sarah walked to the position with steady steps, her small boots thudding on packed earth. The air itself felt heavy, charged. The crowd pressed forward, faces pale. Even General Morrison, base commander, had arrived. Her binoculars tracked the child with an intensity no reporter could match. Thompson watched Sarah prepare. No tremor, no hesitation, just quiet, ritual focus. He leaned closer. At this distance, even perfect isn't enough. Conditions shift, variables you can't control. You sure you understand that? Sarah didn't look up. Yes, Master Chief. My instructor says at the limit you're not shooting the target, you're shooting possibility. Thompson swallowed. Something in her voice, the echo of old wisdom, something passed down. The wind gusted. 15 to 20 shifting, humidity climbing, temperature rising. Sarah lay prone, small hands adjusting scope dials with the patience of a master craftsman. She spent nearly 3 minutes watching heat mirage, reading invisible currents. Colonel Harrison whispered to the general, "In 30 years, I've never seen anything like this." General Morrison's eyes never left the scope. That child is operating beyond most of our special operators. The question is, what do we do with her? But Sarah didn't hear. She thought only of her mother, Gunnery Sergeant Maria Chun, a face framed in dress blues on her nightstand, a legacy not of medals but of sacrifice. Her lips moved, barely audible, "For you, Mom." The trigger broke clean. 1.2 seconds of silence stretched into eternity. Rodriguez triple-checked his scopes. His voice cracked when he spoke. Dead center, perfect, 1,200 yards, new record. The crowd exploded. Shouts, applause, cameras flashing. Marines, men carved from steel, cried openly. Sarah rose slowly, saved her weapon, stood with quiet composure. For the first time all day she smiled. Not wide, not triumphant, a small, private smile, a job done right. Thompson removed his cover, extended his hand. His voice trembled. "Sarah Chun, it's my honor to witness your qualification. You've set records that may never be broken." The handshake froze the cameras, destined to become an image etched into history. But Sarah's eyes, those stayed steady. And deep within them, a question lingered. If she could do this at 9 years old, what would the world demand of her next? How long can a child carry a gift before it feels like a burden? The applause echoed across Fort Pendleton, but Sarah didn't let it touch her. The thunder of cheers, the flashes of cameras, the Marines calling her name, it all rolled over her like waves against rock. She stood still, boots planted, hands behind her back, eyes steady. Colonel Harrison exhaled slowly, as if only now realizing he'd been holding his breath. He had laughed at her, dismissed her. Now he couldn't look away. He had seen Marines miss at 300 yards on their best days. She had carved the X-ring at 1,200. And she was only 9. Reporters shouted questions from behind the ropes, microphones straining over the din. "Sarah, how did you train? Who taught you? How do you feel?" But Sarah didn't answer them. She didn't break formation. Her silence was louder than any statement. Master Chief Thompson stepped beside her, his voice low, his hand firm on her shoulder. "Let's get you off this range, kid. You've done enough for today." But Sarah turned, her voice calm, almost too calm. "Permission to repeat the course, sir." Thompson blinked. "Repeat it, why?" "Consistency matters," Sarah said. "One performance could be luck, 2 proves skill." The Master Chief stared at her, then chuckled softly, a sound foreign to men like him. "You're not wrong, but no, not today. Records stand once, and you just carved one into stone." The crowd pressed closer, MPs holding the line. The general gave a curt nod and Sarah was ushered away from the range. Cameras followed. Helicopters circled. For a moment, the world forgot about barbecue smoke and family day. For a moment, the world's eyes fixed on one little girl in oversized boots. Back in the colonel's office, the air was cooler, quieter, the blinds half drawn. Harrison stood near the window, rubbing his temples. Thompson leaned against a wall, arms crossed, his presence filling the room like stone. General Morrison sat at the colonel's desk, her uniform sharp, her eyes sharper. And Sarah sat in a chair far too big for her, feet not even reaching the floor. She held her cap in her lap, posture perfect, as if waiting for orders she already knew would come. The general spoke first. "Sarah, what you did out there, no one can dispute the skill, but skill like that comes with responsibility. We need to know who trained you." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I promised, ma'am, I can't say." "Even to a general?" Morrison asked softly. "Especially to a general." The colonel shifted, uneasy. Thompson's eyes narrowed, studying her with the patience of a hunter. "You're protecting someone," he said quietly. Sarah didn't move, didn't confirm, didn't deny, but her silence spoke. Thompson leaned closer, his voice gravel. "Let me guess, not your dad. He works late, not some random neighbor. Someone who knew your mom, someone who carried the same weight she did." Sarah's fingers tightened on her cap. The general's tone softened. "Sarah, we're not here to punish you, we're here to protect you. But secrets this big come with risks." Sarah lifted her head, gray eyes unflinching. "A Marine's word is their bond. I won't break mine, not even for you." The silence in the room deepened. Harrison looked away. Morrison's lips pressed thin, but Thompson almost smiled. That night Sarah lay awake in her room, the range still alive in her memory. The echo of the rifle, the steady breath, the silence before Rodriguez's call. She rolled over and stared at the photograph on her nightstand. Her mother, Gunnery Sergeant Maria Chun, in full dress blues, eyes proud, strong, unyielding. "Was I good enough today, Mom?" she whispered. The room gave no answer, just shadows, just the hum of distant base traffic. Her chest tightened. The cheers, the cameras, the applause, they didn't matter. What mattered was whether her mother would have approved, whether the woman who had once steadied her tiny hands on a wooden stock in the backyard would have nodded. A tear slipped down her cheek and she brushed it away before it fell. She hated crying, hated weakness. Her mother had told her once, precision isn't about the rifle, it's about the mind. Calm mind, steady hands, honest heart. But what if her heart wasn't steady? What if it was breaking under weight too heavy for a 9-year-old? She turned to the other photograph, the one no one else knew about, her instructor, the one who kept her mother's promise, the one she had sworn never to reveal. Her secret, her shield. In the days that followed, Sarah's world changed. She became a name whispered in hallways, debated in offices, broadcast on news networks. The military didn't know what to do with her. A prodigy, yes, a miracle maybe, but also a child. The solution was unprecedented. A program built around her, training with elite units during weekends and school breaks. A balance between extraordinary and ordinary, between rifle range and classroom. But balance is a fragile thing. Some Marines treated her like a legend already. Others resented her, muttering that she was a child playing soldier, that she had no right to hold a rifle heavier than her own arm. And Sarah felt both sides, the weight of admiration, the sting of doubt. She trained anyway, hour after hour, breath after breath, shot after shot, because silence was easier than argument, because the rifle spoke clearer than words. One evening, Thompson visited her training bay. She was cleaning the rifle, movements precise, hands moving like a pianist across familiar keys. "You don't stop," he said. Sarah didn't look up. Consistency matters. Thompson nodded. "But so does rest. You're not steel, you're flesh and blood. You need to remember that." Sarah paused, then set the rifle down. Her hands trembled just slightly. She clenched them into fists. "I can't stop," she whispered. "If I stop, maybe I'll lose it. Maybe I won't be good enough next time." Her voice cracked and she hated it. Thompson crouched, his scarred face level with hers. "Listen to me. You're already good enough. But if you push too hard, if you forget you're still human, you'll break. And broken shooters don't set records, they get buried. Sarah swallowed, nodding once, but inside she wasn't sure. Because what scared her most wasn't failing. It was failing her mother's memory. At night when the base grew quiet, Sarah sometimes dreamed of the range. The long distance, the heat mirage, the trigger breaking like glass. But in the dream, the target never appeared. She fired into nothing, over and over, endless silence. She'd wake gasping, heart hammering, sheets damp with sweat. She never told anyone. Not Thompson, not the colonel, not even her secret instructor. Some battles were meant to be fought alone. Weeks later, she stood on the same range again, this time under stricter eyes, tighter rules. The crowd was smaller, but the weight heavier. 500 yards, Rodriguez called. Sarah lay prone, breathing steady, but her mind whispered, "Don't miss. Not now, not ever." The shot cracked. Center mass. She exhaled, relief masked beneath composure. But the voice in her mind lingered. Next time you might miss. Next time you might fail her. Sarah Chun had become a symbol, but symbols are not people. And deep inside, behind the steel-gray eyes, behind the perfect stance, behind the flawless shots, was still a child. A child who missed her mother. A child who feared failure more than anything. A child carrying a gift that might one day break her. What happens when perfection meets its first crack? The morning sun stretched shadows across the Fort Pendleton range. The field looked the same, wooden posts, faded targets, the smell of oil and dust. But for Sarah, everything had changed. She wasn't the anonymous little girl anymore. She was the prodigy, the record breaker, the miracle Marine's daughter. And the weight of all those names pressed against her ribs like armor, too heavy for her frame. Dozens of Marines stood in a neat line, clipboards in hand, ready to log her performance. Journalists lingered at the edges, cameras tucked away but eyes sharp. She could feel them all, watching, waiting. Master Chief Thompson's voice carried over the line. "Targets at 5, 6, and 800 today. Variable winds. You'll be timed. Standard qual course." Sarah nodded. She crouched into prone position, rifle tight against her shoulder. Her breath found its rhythm. 500 crack, hit. 600 crack, center. 800. She adjusted for elevation, her tiny fingers steady on the dials. Crack. Rodriguez's voice hesitated over the comm. Low, just below the X. The crowd murmured. Sarah's chest tightened. She blinked, recalculated, fired again. Crack. High, just outside center. Her hands trembled, just barely. Rodriguez called, "Hit but wide." The Marines scribbled notes. The journalists whispered. Sarah's breathing faltered, her teeth clenched. She fired again. Miss right. The silence was louder than the shot. She froze, the rifle heavy in her hands, suddenly unfamiliar. Master Chief's voice came low, even deliberate. "Stop." She didn't. She squeezed again. "Miss." Finally, Thompson's boots crunched over gravel. His hand pressed gently to the barrel, lowering it. "That's enough." Sarah looked up at him, gray eyes wide, not with defiance but with something worse. Shame. The Marines exchanged looks. Some muttered, "Guess she's human after all." Figures, kid got lucky last time. Records don't mean much if you can't repeat M. Each word sliced. She wanted to shout back, to tell them they didn't understand, but her throat closed, her chest felt too tight. She stood, rifle lowered, but the applause from her first miracle wasn't here. Only silence, only judgment. That night Sarah sat on her bed, knees tucked to her chest. The lamp threw soft yellow light across the photo of her mother, staring back from the nightstand. "I messed up, Mom," she whispered. "I wasn't perfect." Her fingers twisted the edge of her blanket until her knuckles ached. Her mother's voice lived in memory. Precision isn't about never missing. It's about learning from every shot, even the ones that fail. But tonight those words didn't soothe. They scraped. Because Sarah wasn't afraid of missing. She was afraid of becoming ordinary. The next morning, Thompson found her in the empty training bay, rifle spread in pieces across the bench, cleaning rod steady in her hand. "You're in here early," he said. She didn't look up. "I needed to see what went wrong." Thompson leaned against the wall, arms folded. "What went wrong is you let the crowd inside your head. You started performing for them instead of for yourself." Sarah's jaw tightened. "They all think I'm just a kid. If I miss, they'll say I don't belong." "Sarah," his voice softened, heavy with something close to care. "You are a kid. That's not an insult, that's truth. And the fact you're standing toe-to-toe with Marines twice your size doesn't mean you won't stumble. Everyone stumbles." "Not Mom," Sarah whispered. Thompson's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your mom missed plenty. Every sniper has. What made her great wasn't perfection, it was persistence. The willingness to stand back up after a miss." Sarah finally looked up. Her eyes shimmered with frustration. "But I can't let her down, not even once." Thompson crouched so they were level. "Kid, you honor her every time you pick up that rifle, not every time you hit the bullseye. Don't confuse the two." Sarah blinked. Her lips pressed together hard, but she didn't argue. The military's interest didn't waver after her stumble. If anything, it sharpened. Officials debated in closed rooms. Psychologists whispered about resilience and pressure. Journalists dug into her family history, speculating on the mystery instructor she refused to name. Her father kept his distance, lost in long work hours and longer silences. Grief had built a wall between them both. So Sarah leaned harder into training. Day after day, prone, kneeling, standing, dry fire, live fire, calculations scribbled in notebooks, wind readings memorized like multiplication tables. Every miss became a scar she refused to hide. Every hit became proof she could still carry her mother's shadow. But the line between proof and obsession blurred. One afternoon, during a session with Thompson, Sarah fired 12 shots in a row at 700 yards. 11 were dead center. One was 2 inches off. She lowered the rifle, shoulders rigid. Unacceptable. Thompson frowned. "That's 11 more than most SEALs can do on a good day. One miss ruins everything." "No, it doesn't." Sarah's head snapped up, eyes flashing. "If I miss, people doubt. If they doubt, they forget what I did. And if they forget, then Mom's memory fades with it." Thompson froze. The rawness in her voice wasn't about targets. It wasn't about rifles. It was about grief. He sighed, kneeling beside her again. "Sarah, listen to me. Your mother's memory isn't written on paper targets. It's written in you, in how you carry yourself, in the way you keep your word. That's what lasts, not the bulls." But Sarah shook her head, fists clenched. "No, it has to be perfect, or else." She trailed off, but her silence said the rest. Or else she wasn't enough. That night the dream returned. She was on the 1,200-yard line, scope centered, breath steady, but the target never appeared. She fired into emptiness. Again, again. The rifle grew heavier, her arms shook. Then she heard her mother's voice, not calm, not soothing, sharp. "You missed." Sarah jolted awake, breath ragged, sheets tangled. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting back tears. "I'll do better," she whispered. "I'll do better tomorrow." But the fear lingered, coiled deep. A week later, during another demonstration for senior officers, Sarah faced the line again. 500 hit. 600 hit. 800 crack. Rodriguez's voice, "Hi, miss." The crowd murmured. Sarah swallowed hard, adjusted, fired again, crack. Hit. Relief flooded her chest, but she didn't smile. She couldn't. Because in the echo of the shot, she still heard her mother's imagined voice. "You missed." Symbols don't get to stumble. Heroes don't get to be human. And Sarah Chun, 9 years old miracle shooter, daughter of a fallen Marine, was already learning the cruelest truth of all. Perfection isn't a standard. It's a prison. How long can secrets stay buried when the whole world wants answers? The headlines spread like wildfire. 9-year-old shatters seal records. The sniper's daughter, prodigy or military experiment. Television anchors debated her. Psychologists speculated about childhood trauma and exceptional focus. Politicians seized the story, some praising her as a symbol of American resilience, others warning against exploiting a child. And through it all, Sarah Chun stayed silent. Her face appeared on screens, her shots replayed in slow motion, her name turned into hashtags, but she refused interviews, refused photo ops, refused to explain what she had no words for. Because what she held closest wasn't for the cameras. It was her promise. One afternoon, she was escorted into a conference room at base headquarters. The blinds drawn, the air thick with expectation. Seated around the long table, General Morrison, Colonel Harrison, Master Chief Thompson, and 3 men in suits whose polished shoes and clipped voices screamed Washington. Sarah sat small in the leather chair, feet swinging just above the floor. One of the men leaned forward, smile tight. "Sarah, you've become something bigger than yourself. You're inspiring millions, but there are questions the public wants answered." Sarah's hands folded neatly in her lap. "Yes, sir." "Who trained you?" Her eyes flicked to the table, then back, steady. "I can't say, sir, I promised." The man's smile faltered. "Sarah, this isn't a game. The public deserves transparency." Thompson's gravel voice cut through the room. "She's given her answer. Respect it." Another suit leaned forward. "Master Chief, with respect, a child's word cannot outweigh national interest if she's been trained by someone unauthorized." Sarah's voice, small but sharp, sliced through. "A Marine's word is their bond. My mother taught me that. I won't break mine, not even for you." The room froze. General Morrison's lips curved, not in amusement but in something closer to pride. "Gentlemen, I believe she's made herself clear." The suits exchanged glances, their frustration poorly hidden, but Sarah didn't flinch. Her secret would hold. At least for now. But outside that room the storm grew. Reporters camped near the gates. Drones buzzed overhead. News vans waited at her school, microphones thrust at classmates who barely knew her. "Is she normal?" they asked. "Does she talk about rifles at recess? Does she ever smile?" Her classmates whispered behind her back. Some called her a hero, others a freak. At lunch, she sat alone, not because no one invited her, but because the noise of their chatter felt unbearable. Her world was narrowing, rifle training, silence. Everything else became distance. One evening, she slipped away from the barracks and walked the familiar path through a chain-link gate, across a quiet street, to the house where her promise lived. The porch light flickered, the screen door squeaked, and there, waiting as always, was Sergeant Major Rodriguez. Her secret instructor. The woman her mother had trusted. "Late tonight," Rodriguez said softly, motioning her in. "Crowds everywhere," Sarah muttered. "Reporters, I had to wait." Rodriguez studied her face, the exhaustion carved beneath the stoicism. "You holding up?" Sarah sat at the kitchen table, hands curled tight around her cap. "I missed at 800 yesterday." Rodriguez pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, poured water, slid one across. And they all looked at me like I wasn't real anymore. Like maybe it was luck. Like maybe I don't deserve what Mom left me. Rodriguez's eyes softened. "Sarah, your mother never expected perfection. She expected honesty, effort, heart. You gave all of those." Sarah shook her head. "It's not enough, not for them, not for her." The older woman sighed. "Kid, I made your mom a promise to keep you on the path. But the path doesn't mean never stumbling. It means learning how to walk even when it hurts. Sarah blinked hard. The words pressed against something fragile inside her. But she said nothing, because if she spoke, the tears might come. 2 weeks later, she was flown to Washington. The Chamber of Congress towered above her, a cathedral of marble and light. Senators packed the seats, cameras lined the walls. She stood at a podium far too large for her frame, microphone lowered awkwardly to her height. Her hands clutched the edge, knuckles white. Colonel Harrison watched from the gallery. Thompson stood rigid in the corner. Rodriguez sat near the front, eyes glistening. The chairman leaned forward. "Miss Chun, thank you for joining us. We'd like to hear in your own words what your achievement means." The room stilled. Sarah drew a breath. Her voice, though small, carried through the hall. "It doesn't mean I'm special. It means my mom taught me never to give up. It means people believed in me when others laughed. It means gifts aren't about one person. They're about the people who shape us." Her throat tightened, but she pushed on. "I miss my mom every day. But she told me once, dignity doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it just acts. That's all I tried to do." The chamber fell silent. Then slowly applause rose. Politicians seasoned, hardened stood. Some wiped at their eyes. And Sarah stood small, steady, eyes shining but unbroken. That night back in her hotel room, Sarah sat on the bed, staring at the city lights through the tall window. The applause still echoed, the flashes still burned. But in the quiet, she whispered only one thing. "Was that enough, Mom?" The city gave no answer. And the silence felt heavier than the cheers. The world now knew her story. But Sarah knew the truth. Her story wasn't finished. Because shadows still lingered, whispers still followed. Her secret instructor's name could not stay hidden forever. And the weight of expectation, political, military, personal, was only beginning to close in. What happens when a gift becomes a responsibility no child can carry alone? How much of a childhood can survive under a sniper's scope? The base training yard smelled of dust and cordite. Steel targets clanged in the distance, echoing like bells across the California hills. Sarah adjusted her rifle on the sandbag, eyes narrowed through the scope. The world outside the reticle blurred, faded, dissolved, until only math and distance remained. Crack! Rodriguez's voice from the spotting glass. Hit. 3 inches left of center. Adjust 1 click. Sarah nodded, adjusted, fired again. Crack. Center good. But the praise felt thin. Because behind the wire fence that lined the range, she could see them. A crowd again. Reporters with long lenses. Spectators with binoculars. Even a handful of protesters holding signs scrawled in black. "Stop using children as soldiers." Sarah's stomach twisted. She didn't want to be a soldier. She just wanted to be enough. Enough for Mom, enough for herself. But they wouldn't let her. After drills, Colonel Harrison walked beside her, his long shadow stretching over hers. "Sarah, you know the press isn't going away. Congress is demanding updates. The Pentagon's already drawing up options." Her gray eyes looked up. Options. Programs, schools, maybe even deployment paths. Her small shoulders stiffened. "I'm 9, sir." The colonel's lips pressed tight. "I know, that's what scares me." That evening in Rodriguez's kitchen, Sarah slammed her cap on the table, frustration spilling over. "They don't see me. They see a weapon." Rodriguez set down her own mug, watching the child's clenched fists. "You're not a weapon, Sarah. You're a girl who can shoot, that's all." "Not to them," Sarah snapped. "To them I'm proof. To them I'm headlines. To them I'm the miracle Marine's daughter. No one asks if I'm tired. No one asks if I want this." Her voice cracked on the last word. She hated it. Rodriguez moved closer, crouching to meet her eyes. "Then I'll ask, do you want this?" Sarah's lips trembled. She stared at the floor. Silence stretched. Finally, she whispered, "It doesn't matter. Mom would have wanted me to." Rodriguez's throat tightened. She wanted to tell her the truth, that Maria Chun would have wanted her daughter to live, not carry the weight of ghosts. But promises bound tighter than rope, and Rodriguez had promised to guide her, even if guiding meant watching her break. Training intensified. Sarah found herself paired with SEAL candidates twice her age, grueling runs, timed drills, obstacle courses designed to push grown men to collapse. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she never stopped. At night, her body ached so deeply she could barely roll over in bed. She pressed her face into the pillow, muffling sobs that no one could hear. In the morning she rose, because weakness wasn't an option, because perfection was the only currency she believed she had left. One afternoon, during a timed drill at 600 yards, Sarah's hand slipped. Her shot went wide. Rodriguez called it miss. The other candidates smirked. One muttered just loud enough for her to hear, "Told you, kid's a fluke." Her cheeks burned. She fired again. Miss. She fired again, faster, reckless. Miss. Her breathing broke, her vision blurred. Rodriguez barked from the tower, sharper than ever. "Cease fire, Sarah, stand down." But Sarah kept squeezing until the magazine emptied, every shot spraying wide of target. The silence afterward was heavier than the gunfire. Rodriguez's boots hit gravel as she marched to the line, ripping the rifle from Sarah's shaking hands. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. Sarah's chest heaved, her hands trembled violently. I can't miss. If I miss, I'm nothing." Rodriguez's face softened, but only slightly. "Sarah, look at me. You are not nothing. You're not a number on a scorecard. You're not a headline. You're a kid." Sarah shook her head, eyes wet. "Kids don't matter, marksmen do." Rodriguez felt something in her chest crack. The words weren't just despair. They were belief. That night, Rodriguez sat alone in her living room, staring at the folded flag that had once been handed to Sarah's father. Maria's legacy, Maria's shadow. She had promised to protect Sarah, but was she protecting her, or helping the world grind her into a symbol? Her fists clenched, she knew the truth. Sarah wasn't slipping because of lack of skill. She was slipping because no one was letting her be human. The next week, at a scheduled press demonstration, Sarah stood on the range again. Cameras clicked. Officials whispered. She lay prone, rifle steady. The target stood at 1,000 yards. The air thickened. Sweat beaded her brow. She exhaled, fired. Crack. Rodriguez's voice, "Hi, miss." The crowd stirred. Sarah's heart hammered, her fingers twitched. She adjusted, fired again. "Miss." The crowd murmured louder now, doubt in every voice. Her throat closed. She adjusted again, too fast. Her hand slipped. "Miss." Silence. The colonel looked away. Thompson's jaw clenched. The reporters scribbled furiously. And Sarah lowered the rifle. For the first time since she had walked up to Colonel Harrison months ago, she didn't try again. She rolled to her side, curled her knees in, and pressed her hands to her face. The cameras caught it all. The miracle broke. That evening, the news anchors feasted. Prodigy cracks under pressure. Sniper child fails to repeat performance. Was it all hype? Sarah sat in her room, knees hugged to her chest, the glow of the television painting shadows on her wall. Each headline stabbed deeper. She whispered to the dark, "I'm sorry, Mom, I tried. Her voice trembled into silence. Rodriguez came the next day. She found Sarah sitting on the porch steps, staring at the dirt. "Kid," she said softly, lowering herself beside her. Sarah didn't look up. "Everyone thinks I'm fake." Rodriguez shook her head. "No, they think you're human, and that scares them." Sarah's lips trembled. "But I can't be human. If I'm human, I lose her." Rodriguez swallowed. No, if you're human, you honor her, because that's what she was, human, strong, flawed, brave. That's all she ever wanted for you. Sarah finally looked up, eyes wet, searching, needing to believe. But the doubt lingered, because the world didn't want Sarah Chun the child. The world wanted Sarah Chun the legend. And legends aren't allowed to break. What happens when the weight of a promise crushes the one who made it? Sarah's room was dark except for the faint glow of headlights sliding across the wall. She sat cross-legged on the floor, rifle parts laid out neatly before her. Bolt, barrel, scope, stock. Her fingers moved mechanically, cleaning, oiling, assembling. Not because she wanted to shoot, but because the ritual kept her from breaking apart. Each piece locked back into place with a soft click. But nothing inside her clicked anymore. Her body ached constantly, her shoulders bruised from recoil, her knees raw from endless prone positions. Her eyes burned from sleepless nights, replaying every miss, every headline, every whisper of doubt. The voices followed her everywhere. She cracked under pressure. She was just a fluke. Prodigies don't last. But the loudest voice wasn't theirs. It was her mother, in memory and in dream. Precision is honesty, perfection is a lie. Stop chasing ghosts, Sarah. She clenched her jaw, tears burning. I can't stop. If I stop, you'll fade. The silence offered no reply. Training continued, relentless. At dawn, Sarah dragged herself through obstacle courses beside men twice her size. By noon, she lay prone on scorching earth, firing until sweat blurred her vision. At night, she sat through briefings she barely heard, the words melting into static. Thompson watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, worry carving deeper lines into his scarred face. Rodriguez watched too, but with something harder, guilt. After one brutal drill, Sarah staggered to her feet, rifle slipping in her hands. She swayed, almost fell. Enough, Rodriguez barked, she's done. The instructor leading the drill, a Marine captain, shook his head. Not until the standards met. Rodriguez stormed forward, fury in her voice. She's 9 years old, for God's sake. She's not your recruit, she's a child. The captain sneered. Child or not, she wanted this course, she's in it, no exceptions. Thompson's voice cut across the yard, deep and final. Stand down, Captain, that's an order. The captain stiffened, jaw tight, but stepped back. Sarah stood silent, trembling, refusing to meet their eyes. Because in her mind, she hadn't been pushed too far. She had failed. That night, Rodriguez found her sitting in the corner of the barracks, head bowed, eyes hollow. Sarah, she said softly, kneeling, you can't keep doing this to yourself. Sarah's voice was a whisper, ragged. I'm not strong enough. Rodriguez reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. That's not true. You've done more than anyone could ask, more than any kid should ever have to. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. Then why does it feel like I'm breaking? Rodriguez's throat tightened. She wanted to tell her to stop, to walk away, to be a child again. But Maria's face haunted her. The memory of her dying friend's plea, watch over Sarah, keep her on the path. So she whispered instead, because breaking is part of being human, and you're allowed to be human, Sarah. But Sarah shook her head, voice sharp through sobs. No, I can't be. If I'm human, I'm not her daughter. If I'm human, I lose her. Rodriguez's heart broke. She pulled the child into her arms, holding her tight against the sobs. Listen to me, she whispered fiercely. Your mom wasn't perfect. She missed shots. She stumbled, she bled. But what made her extraordinary wasn't that she never failed, it was that she never quit, and neither will you. Sarah clung to her, trembling, her small fists tight in the fabric of her shirt. And for the first time, she allowed herself to cry without shame. Days passed. The headlines shifted, the crowds thinned, other stories stole the spotlight. But inside the base, Sarah's burden only grew. She was no longer the miracle. She was the test case, the subject, the question mark in every closed-door meeting. One evening, after another grueling session, she sat alone on the firing line, rifle resting across her lap. The sky burned orange with sunset. She stared at the distant targets, blurry in the fading light. Her voice was a whisper to the wind. I don't even know if I want this anymore. I don't even know who I am without it. The wind carried no answer, but the silence in her chest felt like one. That night, Rodriguez made a choice. She walked into Thompson's office, shut the door, and laid the truth bare. I'm the one who trained her. Maria asked me to. I've kept it quiet because I thought I was protecting her, but I was wrong. I was protecting myself from breaking a promise, and it's killing her. Thompson leaned back, his face unreadable. You know what this means, Sergeant Major? Yes, Rodriguez said, voice steady. I'll take the heat. I'll face the consequences. But don't let them put this on Sarah. She doesn't deserve it. For a long moment, Thompson said nothing. Then he exhaled, slow and heavy. You might have just saved her life. The next day, Rodriguez sat with Sarah under the shade of an oak tree, away from the range, away from the noise. Sarah, she said quietly, there's something you need to know, something I should have told you sooner. Sarah looked up, eyes tired, searching. I'm the one who trained you, not just as a favor, not just as a neighbor. Your mom asked me to before she deployed. She made me promise to guide you, and I did. But I kept it secret. I thought it was right. I thought it was what she wanted. Sarah's lips parted, shock flickering across her face. You all this time. Rodriguez nodded, her eyes wet. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was afraid. Afraid of what they'd do to you. Afraid of breaking her trust. Afraid of failing her. And failing you. Sarah swallowed hard, her voice trembling. Why didn't you just tell me? Rodriguez reached out, taking her small hands in hers. Because I thought I was protecting you. But the truth is, you deserve to know. You deserve honesty, even if it costs me. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. She looked down, voice breaking. I thought I had to carry her alone. You never did, Rodriguez whispered. You never will. And for the first time, Sarah believed it. That night, Sarah lay in bed, staring at the photo of her mother. The ache in her chest remained. The grief hadn't vanished. The doubt hadn't disappeared. But for the first time, the weight felt shared. She whispered into the dark, I'm still yours, Mom, but I'm theirs too, and maybe I can be mine. The silence didn't answer. But this time, it didn't feel empty. Every legend has a breaking point. But sometimes, breaking is the only way to find what's real. When does strength stop being about the shot and start being about the silence after? The range stood quiet that morning. No cameras, no crowds, just the soft hum of wind across the empty field and the clatter of flags against metal poles. Sarah stood at the firing line, her boots planted in familiar dirt. The rifle lay before her, gleaming under the California sun. But today, she didn't reach for it. Rodriguez and Thompson stood a few paces back, silent guardians. Colonel Harrison lingered near the tower, arms folded. For once, no one ordered her. No one timed her. No one demanded perfection. It was just Sarah. And the memory of her mother's voice. She lowered herself into the prone position, cheek pressed against the stock. The world shrank to scope and target as it always did. She inhaled, exhaled. Crack. Hit, center, Rodriguez called softly. Sarah adjusted, fired again. Center. A third time. Hit wide. Sarah paused, finger resting on the trigger. She could feel the panic rising, the old voice whispering, if you miss, you're nothing. But another voice cut through, softer. Rodriguez's words from under the oak tree. You never had to carry her alone. Sarah exhaled, fired. Hit off center. She set the rifle down. Thompson frowned. You're stopping. Sarah nodded. Yes, Master Chief. Why? She sat up, brushing dust from her sleeves, her gray eyes steady. Because I don't need to prove I'm perfect. Not anymore. One shot doesn't define me, neither does one miss. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Thompson's scarred face cracked into the faintest smile. "Damn right," he muttered. Later that week, Sarah stood again before a podium, smaller this time, in a community hall near the base. No senators, no cameras, just Marines, families, neighbors. She wore her uniform neatly, cap tucked under her arm. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady but softer than before. "I thought being my mother's daughter meant never missing, never stumbling, never breaking. I thought if I was human I'd lose her, but I was wrong. She was human, and she was brave because she kept going anyway. That's what she wanted from me, not perfection, just honesty, just heart." The room stayed silent, listening. She looked down at her hands, then back up, her eyes glistening. "I'll keep training, I'll keep learning, but I'll also be a kid. I'll laugh, I'll play, I'll fall, and I'll stand back up, because that's what she would have wanted." Applause rose, not thunderous but warm, genuine. Rodriguez's eyes shimmered in the front row. Harrison's jaw tightened with something close to pride. Thompson's arms stayed folded, but the corner of his mouth curved upward. The headlines faded, the protests quieted, the reporters moved on. Sarah returned to a quieter rhythm. School during the week, training on weekends, nights spent cleaning her rifle in Rodriguez's kitchen, but also evenings spent riding bikes with kids from the neighborhood, laughter echoing down the street. Balance, fragile, imperfect, but hers. She was still a prodigy, still the girl who shattered seal records, but she was also Sarah, daughter, student, friend, child. And for the first time since her mother's death, she began to believe she could be all of those things without betraying any of them. Months later, she visited her mother's grave. The cemetery was quiet, flags fluttering gently above rows of stone. She knelt, fingers brushing the carved name, Gunnery Sergeant Maria Chun. "I thought I had to be you," she whispered. "But I only need to be me, and that's enough. I promise I'll keep learning, I'll keep trying, but I'll also keep living for both of us." A tear slid down her cheek. This time she didn't wipe it away. Because strength wasn't never crying. Strength was crying and still standing. She placed a single spent casing on the grave, polished and shining in the afternoon sun. "Dignity doesn't speak, Mom, it just acts. I understand that now." She stood, boots crunching softly in the grass, and walked away. The legend of Sarah Chun didn't vanish. It lived in whispers across training yards, in classrooms where instructors told her story, in quiet corners of memory where Marines carried it like a talisman. But Sarah herself lived differently. She laughed more, smiled more, fell down and stood up again. And when she returned to the range, week after week, she didn't count misses as failures. She counted them as lessons. Every bullet, every breath, every moment became part of a larger truth. That greatness isn't perfection. It's persistence. Years later, Marines who had stood on that family day field would still tell the story. How a 9-year-old girl marched up to a colonel and asked to qualify for the sniper range. How laughter turned to silence. How silence turned to awe. And how that same girl, when crushed under the weight of expectation, stood back up, not because she had to, but because she chose to. They would tell it not as a tale of marksmanship, but as a reminder that sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the heaviest truths. That sometimes dignity doesn't shout, doesn't argue, doesn't demand recognition. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak at all. It simply acts.